Hello everyone, welcome to another edition of Creative Writers and Illustrators. With me today are the creators of And That Is Why, a beautiful book filled with 12 folk tales all the way from Manipur. The book has been written by Somi Roy and illustrated by Sapha Yumnam. So thank you both for joining.
Thank you. Hello, Shyamala. Thank you for having us.
Yeah. So since this book is all about origin of stories, I would like to know the origin of this project. So you have written about this for me at the end of the book that you were researching for a project. And that's when while you're sitting and making the gallery notes, you realized there was material for a book. So at what point did you tell yourself that these stories have to be told? You know, what was it that you discovered that made you feel this is a project which has to be conserved and shared for posterity?
Shyamala, first of all, these are not folk tales. These are stories from Manipuri mythology.
Okay.
So these are retellings of myths from Manipur. Secondly, yes, it did start as research for different projects, from gallery notes for an art exhibition, because I like the art in the illustrated manuscripts, and or for my polo and pony preservation project and so on. I didn't really have a children's book in mind. That only came about because Penguin suggested it.
Okay. So you've obviously, listened to some of these myths while you were a child, and now you have rediscovered them as an adult. So did you find a difference, or was there any discovery that you made as an adult which it probably didn't strike you or you didn't realize as a child?
Oh, lots of discoveries, a series of discoveries, and therefore I'm really thankful to my publisher, Penguin Random House India, for suggesting a book on this, because it really made the project real. Now I had to work towards something in a particular genre, in a particular form. Yes, many of these stories we've heard when we were children, like you grew up listening to stories of the Mahabharata or the Ramayana. We also heard stories of these when we were all kids in different forms, people telling it to you. We have storytelling sessions in temples when we hear other things, but these are pre-Hindu myths. These are from before 18th century when Manipur became Vaishnav. So these are pre-Hindu mythology that these stories come from, and to actually sit down and write them, to form the narrative, one had to draw upon several sources to form something that had a certain shape in terms of a story that would be interesting to children.
Sapha, you've done a wonderful job. I have never seen Manipuri artwork, so for me it was a journey in itself. So when did you, what was your connection with the artwork? I know you teach at the university, so even before you ended up as a tutor, so were you dabbling with the artwork, Manipuri artwork?
Actually, actually for that, I have been, searching for this artwork, from very long, during my graduation period. Then that time, I found a good, book, which was written by Mutwa Bahadur. And it is a full of illustrated manuscript painting of Manipuri art, exclusive. Then after that, I went to further course and further. Then I found a lot of significant of art. Related to your folk. So I was searching, and in course of time, and during the COVID, actually, I should say, during the COVID, I and one of my friends, Wangam Somorjit, we used to talk each other, and we chat, and we were saying like, why don't you choose this unusual artwork? Why don't you start this artwork? I mean, he was suggesting me, and I also thinking from the long back, and yes, I will start it. Then during COVID time, I continuously I did minimum 15 works. After that, I made Somi. Then we started, for this project.
Yeah, how lovely. So I'm curious about the artwork. When it comes to, for me, the reference point is Wadli art. So when you talk about Wadli art, you look at the geometric shapes. There's a triangle, there are circles, there are lines, and there are squiggles, and you look at it and this is Wadli art. Is there something like that for Manipuri art? I mean, this is coming from a question of from a space of ignorance. So
yes, exactly. In fact, in Manipur, we have a two school of art. One is before the advent of the Vaishnavism and after the advent of Vaishnavism. So this artwork is basically, from the before the advent of Vaishnavism, where I mean, people used to, draw or paint in the puya. We call it the manuscript. So this art form has some unique from other manuscript painting, like using of their line. Basically, whenever you draw any form or any figure, it's full of line, and you can find very less amount of color. So in a color such as the red color, brown, and some slightly blackish one, and a minimum amount of blue. So there is a variation and there is a distinction in the using of the color also. And the one thing is that in this painting, the one of the most specific character, I mean, wow, this is the art form of the Manipuri, because there is no background at all, and there is no any perspective, and it is something very primitive kind of, and this one peculiar thing that I found is that, well, there is no any specific particular character in the manuscript. Nobody doesn't say this is the god, this is the goddess, and this is the flower of this kind of flower, and nobody doesn't say anything. It is just representation of a flower, of a tree, of a figure, like that.
Right. Somi, I found something. I've read myths from all over the world and from India, and nowhere have I noticed the reader being acknowledged and addressed. Because I think in almost all the stories, the reader is addressed as, "Oh, benevolent one," "Oh, I've written it down here." "Oh, dear surprised one, dear impatient one, dear puzzled one." So is that something which has been a part of these manuscripts, or is it something you have added into the text?
It's a good question. Thank you for asking that. No, it's really something that I did. It was my way of interacting and addressing the reader directly. It really started with the use of words that might be a little difficult for someone who's 8 years old, but maybe reachable for someone who's 11 or 12. The young adults market that Puffin addresses as 8+. So this is my first children's book, and I had not written for children. And as I keep telling people, I don't have children myself, so I don't have the experience of actually reading bedtime stories to kids. So when I reached back to my own childhood reading habits and what I loved as a child, that's where this is coming from. That's what I used in order to write the story. But I had to develop a style. I wanted to develop a style. Characterization is one of the figures, because in retelling of mythology and in retelling of folk tales also, there is no characterization. We just know Jack and the Beanstalk, Jack is a courageous boy, and that's it. So the shading of characters, I think the poet James Merrill spoke about it. It's been tongues of generations have smoothed it out. So you get this two-dimensional characters that move across all fairy tales and mythologies and so on. And that is what makes it also very, very powerful. But in order to add to that, I was using some vocabularies that was difficult. And so I used the addressing of the reader as a way to kind of indicate to the child some idea of what that word meant, so as not to interrupt the flow of the reading. Like, for instance, in my first chapter, I introduced the word kowtow for the first time, which is used throughout the book. That's when you fall to the ground and on your knees in a very Chinese style, which is the way we address and we greet our elders and the respected people. So I say, then I kind of explain that this is something, dear, when I say, and then he kowtowed, dear respectful one, it means that kowtow and respect are somehow, these two concepts are linked together. So it's actually just a way of doing things so as not to interrupt the flow.
So when you looked at the text or in these manuscripts, was it ready for consumption for children? Or did you have to distill it, and leave out some parts, to make it for kids?
Everything is a retelling, because these are stories that are very, very, very old, generations, centuries. We don't even know when exactly they started. So some of the stories, like the ones I got from my friend Tawyangba, are from his retelling. And he had published a book with a grandfather telling stories to the grandchildren. So I like that. I kind of used that idea and made it a much more direct address to the reader. So that was my style. But in retelling, one looks at finished stories, which then I had to retell, because the target is an English language speaking person or a reading person who does not necessarily know the background of Manipur, or may not be Manipuri for the most part. Yes. So most of the readers are not going to be Manipuri. So I had to keep that in mind. So I had to retell that. The fragments of references to the actual text, the original text that even writers like Tawyangba are referring to, are older texts. And those are in different forms, and they're very fleeting. Some of them are very short. And some of them are actual books. Like, for instance, the story of the Pied Cuckoo comes from the manuscript called Tu Ting Lon, which is this manuscript, fairly, solid, about the management of rivers, the cleaning of rivers. So it's about water management. It's a water management treatise. But in those days, treatises are not written as scientific documents, but they take in folklore and magic and stories and references to rituals and so on. On the other hand, the story of the fire coming to Andhra village is from a specific manuscript called The Travels of Retold, the culture hero that brings civilization to the Manipuris, for instance. So those are, so the text can vary in size and in detail. But what we also have in Manipur, which is really interesting and which I found extremely useful for me to refer to, and also a very creative way of looking at how one might tell a story, is that the story is also told in song, in ballads. Yes. And so there's already another form of narrative that is coming out that is sung, because most of the manuscripts are probably, especially the older ones, are all oral in origin and then written down later. So the oral traditions are written in poetry that is sung or recited. In ritual, it's recited. In ballads and performances and festivals, like the Lai Harauba, which is the major festival in Manipur every summer, these are ballads. And then you have romantic ballads. Some of these have religious connotations. Some of them have less connotations of religion and belief systems, like the Moirang stories, for instance, of the two lovers that always get separated in every birth, and then they vow to meet in the next incarnation, for instance. Those are all in song. These are heroic ballads. These are epic ballads. They're longer than the Iliad and the Odyssey. So So there are many sources that these stories come from, and so one has to knit them together to create a story. And a young lady I know was texting me last night saying that this is the first time that she's actually hearing the stories and reading the stories in a full form. It's like starting from a once upon a time to a happily ever after format. So to actually do the retelling of things that we've heard before, some of them in nursery rhymes, some of them in children's games, some of them in the texts of the manuscripts, some of them in retellings by local Manipuri authors, and then some of them are reiterations, some iterations from balladeers in song and in poetry. So the challenge actually, the fun part was actually creating a single genre, a different kind of storytelling that was for a particular target market, for a particular publisher.
You've dedicated this book to Mr. K. Chandra. So how did he fit into this project? What has been your association with him? Was he a balladeer? Was he a scholar?
He was a scholar, and he worked in the archives department of the government of Manipur. That was his day job until he retired. He lived into his 90s. And I met him when I was a young boy, and I actually studied Maitai Mayek, which is the script that the manuscripts are written in from him back when this is back in the 70s when I was a kid. The use of Maitai Mayek actually didn't come about till after 2005. So 30 years later or 40 years later, the script is now in use. But then I kind of, through sheer disuse, because it was not there, I stopped using Maitai Mayek. So my first interaction was with him. He was an old family friend. He's a person that my mother used to consult for the writing when she was writing her historical novel. In much the same way that I consult my cousin Somorjit, who introduced me to Sapha, for instance. Like, what is that date? What happened over here? Where are the sources? So we've known him for a very long time, but he's astounding scholar. He knows everything back and forth. And it was in his collection that I saw the illustrated manuscripts for the first time. It was in his collection, it was him who told me about the legend of the flying horse, for instance, and showed me, a figurine that he had. He was the one who showed me the manuscripts that he had brought from Mandalay, for instance, amazing manuscripts. And so my interest in manuscripts actually comes from, and Maitai Mayek comes from Oja Pabung K. Chandra, and that's why I dedicated to him.
So sweet. And were these manuscripts in perfect condition? I mean, on what were they created? Was it like a palm leaf, or was it like a proper handmade paper, rice paper?
Most palm leaf and leaf manuscripts are in the minority, in the very small minority. They do exist, as do manuscripts written on bark and bamboo and so on. But the vast bulk of these are handmade paper. And our handmade paper is different from the Indian tradition. As I was saying in another venue, my friend Neeta owns the manuscript that Aurangzeb had in Aurangabad. And when I was discussing getting paper actually for Sapha to draw upon, she said, no, this is not the kind of paper. When we did try it, I gave him a couple, and it was too absorbent. He really couldn't use it so much. So the material that we use, unlike in India, is not linen, it's not old cloth, it's not fiber, but it's also plant-based, like in the traditions of East Asia. The lifting technique of the pulp from the water is also apparently different. And those are minutiae that I didn't get into because Vinita was willing to tell me all about it, and she would have gone on for days on this one. The manuscripts themselves are about 15 inches long and about 5 inches high. They're stacked individual sheaves with a wooden slat at the bottom and another wooden slat on the top, and then you wrap it in cloth, usually red sacred cloth, and then that's your book and put it on the shelf. Many of them are brittle, and in not good condition. Many of them have little insect holes from bugs eating away at them. But when I first touched the manuscripts, uh, I worked in museums. I'm a museum curator, really. So I was like very scared because one doesn't actually handle these things without cloth gloves. You have to wear gloves. But Manipur, the tradition is that the more you use them, the better. That the grease from your hands actually keeps the manuscript paper supple. So the ones that are brittle are the ones that have not been really used. The manuscripts themselves as material objects is actually less important in many ways because these are being copied over and over again by different scholars and kept in different personal archives, or sometimes in the Royal Archive, or nowadays in the State Archive on the university where Sapha teaches, for instance. But the idea is that manuscripts are living things. You handle them, don't fear it. The more you handle them, yeah, it may get a little grotty, but it really does not. It means that the bugs really won't eat them, and they won't get brittle, break away. So we don't know how old some of these manuscripts are. If they're being copied over and over again, it's not really the paper as much as the content. And the content also changes over time, as one can imagine. I've seen manuscripts, I've seen translations that I've read where there's a difference. Because it's like Borges's universal library of every conceivable variation of permutation and combination of words. So things change imperceptibly sometimes, but over time, through politics, through the preference of the people adding interpretation, minimally, the little shifts in the copying tradition means that the manuscripts can change over time. So what did the original Retold manuscript look like? We don't know. What we're looking at is a copy. When does that copy come from? We don't know. There are many we don't knows over here in this project.
Sapha, was it easy to recreate the color tone used for this artwork? Because in those days they would have used, the raw material for these paints would have been completely different, right?
Yes, actually, living in this, era, and I'm very young, and I was thinking about, exactly what they have used. Actually, I was trying to search about, how their preparation and all, but I find some of the books have written about the preparation of indigenous color. How they made about, for the textile and all. So, but. Till now I haven't started that directly, practically I haven't started, but in for this illustration I thought acrylic is very common to all. Acrylic color is very common, and it has a two quality, like you can make it opaque and you can make it transparent one. But when I see the most of the manuscript has a transparent, it's something done with the color, color with the water. So I thought that water with the acrylic would be more, suitable for this illustration. So I choose acrylic color. Yeah. And one more thing is that when I choose color, I am very, conscious about the color, because I never seen the original Puya, actually. I have seen, but I didn't, work for the, how their values of the color. But the books which Mutua Bahadur gave me, from that book only I searched about the characteristic of this, whole picture. So I find some of the very abundant color which is used by the manuscript found in the painting. So I choose the brown and reddish color with using of water. That's how I used to do that.
And so what was your biggest challenge of creating the artwork?
Yes, actually that
you have created these paints, so your brush has to move in a certain direction, and it has to those strokes have to come in the way you want to.
On the first day itself, when I went to meet Somi with my friend, So I saw some of my works, I mean earlier works, and Tamu was saying that this is so good. I mean, he collected 2 works for me. Then I came to know that okay, it is something very close to the manuscript which I bring that. So that give me a confidence to me, and also I mean Tamu saw me so much confident on that. And after that, I thoroughly read the stories and all. There was the most challenging is that not in the technique. I was thinking of the character, the character of that particular text, and how could I bring that character about particularly one person. In the manuscript, there is nothing about the representation of the god and the goddess, but in this mythology, there is specific, very specific. I mean, Soraren, there is Asiva, there is Harava, So I was very, I used to sketch. And after that, I circulate to Tamo and to my friends Somorzi. Then we used to discuss. And one more thing is that I'm as an artist. I have a lot of skill, maybe because I brought up in a school of art. So I used to create very beautifully. In a way. And I used to create and I used to add extra design. Then there is some little, worried about, if you add more, then the character will be go in a different way. It should not be close to the, manuscript, which so that's how I used to keep talking with Tamo Somi, and with my friend, and yes, of course, with my family also. So and in terms of the line, for this particular manuscript, I use there is one brush which is a very old brush actually, which is very old, and I don't use that brush. But that brush is very perfect for making this illustration. Something like not much smooth, not much rough. That brush is only one brush I use actually for this whole manuscript, which is I didn't use. Long back I keep it somewhere. Then I found, and yeah, that's how I did it.
I generally have brushes like 0, 0.0, 0, double zero, triple zero.
Yeah, and we used to prefer the new one also. Right. But I choose the old one, which is very torn and in bad condition.
Yeah, so old is gold. The mythology had to be brought to life using the best. Right. Yeah. You had some slides to show us. If you can just show quickly 2 slides, that would be like wonderful. We're running short of time. We just have like 3 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah. Two slides. That's all we have. Can you enlarge them?
Okay. This slide. This is the illustration from that is why man gets wrinkle and stiff in his old age. Actually, in this you can find 2 types of two styles of painting. I'm mixing up actually. There are 3 types I found. Mostly, generally, they one is totally with the lines, and one is something with the color of brown and red color, and one is with slightly the color of blue color. So I'm putting these 2 styles in one painting here. So most of the, I find in terms of the composition, there is 2 types I find mostly as symmetrical. One is very, they are using symmetrical composition, like when you divide 2 in the middle, then the balance is almost same. So this is the composition which I bought from as it is from the manuscript. Even the character of the Soraren, which I saw in the right side. One who is holding the 2 floral design within a frame. This is the character of the Soraren, for instance, in this book. But this is exactly what I found from the manuscript also. There is nothing changes at all. In terms of their structure and all. Yeah. And when I read the book of this chapter, I was thinking that Somi and the Random House, public penguin, they have saying that you have to make only one full image. So it is very difficult to illustrate also. The story is too long and there is so many characters. So that's why I choose the most important character from the story. Then I have been starting, from the bottom to top. I was, to narrate the visual image. So I started from the bottom to top. There is a meeting of the snake. There is a meeting of the monkey. There is a meeting of elephant. Then a man comes later. Man is working with something. So that's how I, compose according to that text. Next.
Yeah, so I have a question related to this. So on some of the artwork, you have inscriptions. The second one is, there are two places where the inscription is, it's present. Are these codes? Are these is it a part of the text which appears in the artwork? What is it?
I think this answer will be, Somi will add this answer, but from my side, Tamo was advised me to, bring some, script of Meitei Mayek. So we haven't discussed about that, and I thought yes, because like in every text of manuscript, you can find the text as well as the image. In relations to the text and the image. So, and there is one sign here. It's called the NG. So whenever whoever the scriber writing any start before writing the any text then he or she should
can we just
write,
pause? Can we pause for a moment? We're going to get cut off right now. We'll just do this in the next video.
Okay.
I'll send the link. Yeah.
Somi, I'm given to Somi. Somi, you just.
You have to stop sharing, I guess. Yeah.